The wedding was held at a renovated barn just outside Asheville, North Carolina, where white lights hung from wooden beams and soft country music floated through the warm evening air. Guests arrived dressed in elegant outfits, laughing and taking photos near the flower arch. Among them was a young woman named Lily Harper. She wore a simple lavender dress, her hair neatly tied back, hands folded nervously in front of her. Lily was visibly overweight, and the moment she stepped inside, a few glances lingered longer than they should have, some filled with quiet judgment. Lily was the cousin of the bride, invited out of obligation rather than closeness. She rarely attended events like this because she knew what usually followed: whispers, smirks, and cruel jokes disguised as concern. Tonight was no different. As she passed a group of well-dressed guests near the drink table, laughter broke out behind her. "That dress must be working overtime," someone muttered. Another added, "Hope the chairs are strong enough." Lily pretended not to hear, but her cheeks burned, and her steps slowed. She found a seat near the back, trying to make herself invisible. Her eyes drifted to the happy couple at the altar, wishing she could focus on their joy instead of her own discomfort. Memories flooded her mind. Years of dieting, failed attempts at change, doctors who didn't listen, and strangers who thought her body gave them permission to judge her entire life. She reminded herself she was here to support family, nothing more. Still, the laughter echoed in her ears, sharper than the music. Across the room stood Daniel Brooks, a single father in his late 30s, holding a small plate of food while keeping an eye on his 6-year-old daughter, Emma. Daniel had been invited as a friend of the groom, but his attention shifted when he noticed Lily sitting alone. He saw the way her shoulders hunched, how she avoided eye contact, how laughter nearby made her flinch. Daniel knew that look well. It was the same one he'd worn years ago after his wife passed away and people pitied him instead of understanding him. Emma tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, why is that lady sad?" Daniel followed her gaze and sighed softly. "Sometimes people forget to be kind," he replied. Emma frowned. "That's not nice," she said firmly. Daniel smiled at her honesty, but something inside him stirred. He watched as another guest walked past Lily and snickered openly this time. That was the moment Daniel decided he couldn't stay silent. As dinner was served, the mockery became bolder, fueled by wine and careless confidence. Someone took a photo and joked loudly about posting it, for laughs. Lily stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. For a brief second, it looked like she might leave. The room seemed to hold its breath. Before she could take a step, Daniel walked forward, his voice calm but clear enough to cut through the noise. "Excuse me," he said, turning toward the guests who were laughing. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Daniel placed his plate down and continued, "I'm not sure when it became acceptable to humiliate someone at a wedding, but I know this isn't what love looks like." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The guests who had been laughing shifted uncomfortably. Daniel gestured gently toward Lily. "You see a body and think you know a story. But you don't know her battles, her kindness, or her strength." Lily froze, heart pounding. No one had ever defended her like this, especially not in front of strangers. Daniel went on, his voice steady but emotional. "I'm a single dad. I've been judged, pitied, and whispered about too. And if there's one thing I want my daughter to learn, it's that worth isn't measured by size, status, or appearance." He looked around the room. If that makes anyone uncomfortable, maybe it's time to ask why. Silence followed, heavy and undeniable. Emma walked up beside her father and slipped her small hand into his. She looked up at Lily and smiled. "I like your dress," she said simply. A few guests looked down, embarrassed. One woman quietly apologized. Another excused herself to the restroom, face flushed. The bride, having noticed the tension, approached and gently hugged Lily. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but this time they weren't from shame. They were from relief. She managed a small smile and whispered thank you to Daniel. He nodded, not seeking praise, just hoping he'd done the right thing. The music resumed, softer now, and the mood slowly shifted. People began talking again, but the laughter had changed. It was warmer, more careful, as if the room itself had learned a lesson. Later that evening, Lily found herself standing near the dessert table when Daniel approached with 2 plates of cake. "I figured no one should eat wedding cake alone," he said lightly. Lily laughed, a real laugh, surprised at how easy it felt. They talked. About work, about Emma, about life's unexpected turns. Lily shared that she worked as a graphic designer and volunteered online, helping others who struggled with self-esteem. Daniel listened, genuinely impressed. As the night went on, Lily danced for the first time in years. Not because she suddenly felt thin or flawless, but because she felt seen. Daniel watched from the sidelines, Emma asleep on a chair beside him, and smiled. He knew he hadn't changed the world, but maybe he'd changed one night, one moment, one heart. Sometimes that was enough. When the wedding ended and guests began to leave, Lily stopped Daniel near the exit. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "But you did, and I'll never forget it." Daniel shrugged gently. "I hope if my daughter is ever treated that way, someone speaks up too." Lily nodded, emotion thick in her throat. They parted ways under the glow of string lights, both carrying something new. Weeks later, Lily would think back to that night whenever doubt crept in. She started attending events again, standing a little taller. Daniel and Lily stayed in touch, their connection growing slowly, built on respect rather than appearances. And though the wedding was meant to celebrate one love story, it unexpectedly became the beginning of another, one rooted in courage, kindness, and the simple power of standing up when it matters most.